So task 2 is for you to use the same CSV file and to this time read it in and find the maximum or the patient with the maximum glucose level and print that to another file. Okay, so remember, just to recap in terms of, if you look at files here, you've got the diabetic file. Now we've got 4 columns, so think about each column is going to be a separate array, and within the arrays obviously you address it using indices. So at index 9 for each array is information for phone number, name, glucose and cholesterol for that one person. Okay, so if you look at the program, what you would do is copy and paste the read file code, so that code has to be in all 5 examples that you'll be doing. So just once you've got the very first program working, just copy it and just paste it in. Okay, now sometimes when you copy and paste, what you'll find is the alignment of the columns isn't quite right, or the indentations I should say, so just double check that, because that can throw up an error. Now again, the names of all the procedures and functions are given to you, and what it's returning is given to you, and the top level program is given to you. Okay, so you don't need to change anything like that. Now what you've got here is you've got find max glucose. Now we're going to write all the details about the patient that's got the maximum glucose level, so you're going to have to pass them all 4 arrays: the phone array, name array, glucose array and the cholesterol array. We're going to actually store the details about the person with the maximum glucose in just these 4 variables: max phone, max patient, max glucose and max cholesterol. So what happens once it's read in the file, it then calls this function. Okay, and so this function is max glucose, and it says, right, here's the arrays that you're going to use. So if we, and it's quite a small piece of code, so what happens here is it takes in the 4 arrays, okay, and it saves it as phone list, phone name list, gluc list and cholesterol list. Okay, now a list and array are interchangeable names, so quite often you hear the word array and it's interchanged with the word list. Now what happens with this algorithm, and we did it before the first lockdown, or the second one I should say, is we're going to apply the algorithm to the glucose array, because that will tell us the actual value of the glucose and we can find the largest number stored in that array. So before you actually look through the array, you have to read values into the variables that we're going to have. So this is going to be max G, max pH, max PA, max C, and these correspond to, because we return these values, and they correspond to the values here. Okay, so first things first, we just take the very first value of the glucose in the glucose array, and we just say, well, we don't know any other value, so we'll just take that as being the maximum value. As you do that, take the first value of the name, take the first value of the phone and the first value of the cholesterol, and just save that as the maximum of each of these values, or each of these arrays, because it all corresponds to the very first person. So what is actually happens is it's taken these values and it's stored that. So right now we're saying Anne has got the highest glucose, and this is Anne's name, Anne's phone number and Anne's cholesterol, and we're storing these in these 4 max variables. Okay, obviously when we look through, we'll find that there's somebody else has got a higher cholesterol, and we can replace these max variables with the data about Diana. Okay, but that's all part of this for loop. So we look through the array, and if we actually find within the glucose array, okay, so if we actually find a value that's bigger than what we've currently got as max glucose, then save that value. Okay, so take that value from the glucose array at that particular point in the counter, or it depends on iterating through this loop, and take that value as the maximum glucose. As you do that, we'll take the phone number at the exact same index and save it as max phone number. Take the name, save it as max name, and save it as the max cholesterol, save it into max C. Okay, so as soon as you find a bigger cholesterol, just grab all the other information from the arrays at that particular index and save it into the corresponding variables. Passes that back to the main program. The main program then says, right, well, let's write to glucose. So it passes at these 4 variables that now store all the information about the patient that's got the maximum glucose. If there's not a file there already called maxglucose.csv, this means write, but if there's not a file to write to, it'll actually create the file. Okay, so what's happening there is it's saying, well, write to this file. It's making all the data string so it can actually get written into the file, and this /n just means take a new line. So when I run that, you won't see anything much happening there. It's all in this glucose file, and it's Norman's got a glucose of 220. It's the highest out of all the patients, and that's his phone number, that's the patient name, and that's the cholesterol. Okay, so you just take your time, and the main thing here is being able to use this find max algorithm, which you've done before, and then write it to a new file, okay, called max glucose. So hopefully that's helped.